Seneca, the politician. If Marcus Aurelius is the king and Epictetus is the prophet, Seneca is the politician. He is the most controversial, the most contradictory, and arguably the most talented writer of the bunch. Seneca, circa 4 BC, 65 AD, was not a recluse. He was the wealthiest man in Rome. He was a playwright. He was the tutor and chief advisor to Emperor Nero. He lived in the absolute center of the viper's nest. Critics have called him a hypocrite for 2,000 years. How can you preach stoic poverty while owning 300 ivory tables? But that is exactly why he is so valuable to us. He teaches us how to be a stoic in the real, messy, compromised world of money and power. Here is a deep dive into the senator. 1. The context. The tutor of tyrants. Seneca was hired to tutor the young Nero. For the first 5 years of Nero's reign, Seneca and the prefect Burrus essentially ran the Roman Empire. Historians call this the Quinquennium Neronis, a golden era of good governance. But as Nero grew older, he grew deranged. He murdered his mother and his stepbrother. Seneca tried to retire and give his fortune back to the emperor to buy his freedom. Nero refused. Seneca spent his final years in a terrifying limbo, knowing the monster he helped raise would eventually kill him. The lesson. He wrote his best philosophy with a sword hanging over his head. 2. The format. The letters. Unlike Marcus, diary, or Epictetus, lectures, Seneca wrote essays. His most famous work is Moral Letters to Lucilius. These are 124 letters written to a friend, but they were clearly meant for publication. They are masterpieces of rhetoric. They are witty, sarcastic, and beautifully written. If Epictetus is a punch to the gut, Seneca is a glass of wine and a conversation. 3. Core concept, time management, on the shortness of life. Seneca wrote the definitive essay on time. He argued that life is long enough if you know how to use it. The problem. We waste our lives on soft luxury and busy work. The quote. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long if you know how to use it. He mocks people who say, I will retire at 50 and start living. He asks, how do you know you will live to 50? Who gave you a guarantee? To Seneca, putting off happiness for the future is the biggest crime against the soul. 4. Core concept, premeditatio malorum, negative visualization. Seneca perfected the technique of premeditating evils. He advised that every morning you should imagine everything going wrong. Imagine your house burning down. Imagine your exile. Imagine your death. Why? To remove shock. What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect. Disaster has less power over those who have foreseen it. To enhance gratitude. If you imagine losing your wife, you appreciate her more when you see her at breakfast. He famously said, the man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. 5. Core concept, anger management, on anger. Seneca wrote an entire book called De Ira, on anger. He disagreed with the Aristotelians who said, a little anger is useful for motivation. Seneca argued that anger is temporary madness. It is a liquid that, once poured, cannot be controlled. His advice. Delay. The greatest cure for anger is time. When you feel the spark, wait. Self-check. Anger usually comes from an inflated ego. How dare they do this to me? If you lower your ego, The insult misses the target. 6. The defense of wealth. Preferred indifference. This is where Seneca defends his own life. He argues that a wise man can have money as long as the money doesn't have him. He called wealth a preferred indifferent. He said, "For the wise man, wealth is a servant. For the fool, wealth is the master." He believed it was actually harder to be a Stoic when you are rich, because the temptation is always there. He didn't see himself as a hypocrite. He saw himself as a man fighting a very difficult battle against luxury. 7. The death. The cortege. In 65 AD, Nero finally accused Seneca of being part of a conspiracy, which he likely wasn't, and ordered him to commit suicide. Seneca's death was a messy, drawn-out affair, but he handled it with absolute theatrical grace. He opened his veins, but because of his age and diet, the blood flowed too slowly. He dictated a final dissertation to his scribes while bleeding out. He eventually had to be placed in a warm bath to speed up the blood flow, and reportedly suffocated from the steam. His last words were an offering to Jupiter the Liberator. He died as he wrote, turning his final moment into a lesson. Summary. The human Stoic. Seneca is the bridge between the impossible ideal and the messy reality. Epictetus tells us what to do. Marcus Aurelius shows us how to do it in power. Seneca explains why it is so hard and talks us through the failure. He is the most modern of them all because he openly admits to his flaws. He famously wrote, "I am not a wise man. I am just a patient in the same hospital as you, discussing my treatment."